What you have drafted is not merely a constitution in the conventional sense, it is a civilizational manifesto encoded in constitutional form. Evaluating it requires abandoning the usual yardstick of balance as moderation and instead asking whether it is internally coherent, teleologically clear, and institutionally survivable under stress. On those terms, it is both ambitious and precarious, visionary and overdetermined, deeply principled yet structurally burdened. At its core, the Constitution is not trying to set up a government. Its true purpose is to permanently invert the normal hierarchy between person, state, economy, and technology. The state is not sovereign, the individual is. Law is not creative, it is declarative of natural rights. Economics is not a neutral subsystem, it is a moral ecology. Technology is not a private force, it is a public instrument that must remain auditable, forkable, and subordinate to human autonomy. Read this way, the document's animating purpose is to prevent the re-emergence of systemic domination, political, economic, technological, or epistemic, after the historical failures of liberal capitalism, technocracy, and centralized social democracy. The Constitution is designed as a permanent anti-capture engine. The people attracted to this project are therefore a very specific coalition. They are not centrists, and they are not conventional radicals. They are libertarians who no longer trust markets alone, progressives who no longer trust centralized bureaucracies, technologists who fear black box power, constitutionalists who believe the American experiment stopped halfway, ecological thinkers who reject both extractivism and primitivism, and a subset of anarchists who have made peace with the necessity of institutions so long as those institutions are defeatable, transparent, and revocable. In short, this is a constitution for people who think the Enlightenment was unfinished business and that the digital age makes finishing it unavoidable. The end this system serves is resilience against future tyranny under post-industrial conditions. It is explicitly future-facing. It assumes that power in the 21st century will not primarily arrive wearing uniforms or waving flags, but embedded in algorithms, supply chains, financial abstractions, credential systems, and infrastructural choke points. The Constitution's obsession with open-source governance, algorithmic auditability, distributed energy, anti-hostile architecture, and citizen-initiated lawmaking is not ornamental, it is an immune response to anticipated forms of domination. In that sense, it is less about governing today's people than about protecting tomorrow's people from systems they did not consent to and may not fully understand. Does it protect or detriment the future? Both. It protects the future by making power legible, fragmentable, and resistible. It detriments the future by assuming a level of civic virtue, technical literacy, and sustained participation that may not be sociologically stable across generations. The Constitution is robust against bad elites but fragile against mass apathy, exhaustion, or factional overload. The primary axioms are remarkably consistent, even if their application is sometimes excessive. First, self-ownership and individual sovereignty are ontologically prior to the state. Second, natural law constrains all positive law, rendering unjust statutes void ab initio. Third, power must always be reversible, auditable, and defeasible by the people. Fourth, concentrated ownership, political or economic, is a structural evil regardless of intent. Fifth, technology must serve autonomy, not behavioral control. Sixth, ecological systems have moral standing alongside human ones. These axioms place the Constitution in a rare categorical space, a libertarian distributist, social democratic, libertarian republican hybrid with strong populist and cybernetic elements. There is no clean label for it in existing political taxonomy, it is closer to a post-liberal, post-neoliberal constitutionalism than to any party ideology. Does it meet the aims of progressivism and libertarianism equally? Philosophically, yes. Practically, it leans libertarian in rights theory and progressive in material provisioning. It affirms maximal civil liberty, self-defense, resistance, and refusal, while simultaneously endorsing universal services, ecological regulation, and moral constraints on accumulation. Where it succeeds is in refusing to trade liberty for welfare or welfare for liberty. Where it struggles is in implementation. Libertarianism is institutionally cheap, progressivism is administratively expensive, and this document attempts to run both simultaneously without fully reconciling their operational tensions. The same answer applies to social democracy and classical republicanism. The Constitution honors republican non-domination, civic duty, rotation in office, and suspicion of faction, while embracing social democratic commitments to health, welfare, and material security. The novelty lies in its insistence that social provision must not become bureaucratic domination and that republican virtue must not become moral authoritarianism. Whether that balance can be sustained depends less on text and more on culture. The hardest question you ask is whether an economically free people can exist under distributism and libertarianism. The Constitution answers, yes, but only by redefining economic freedom away from unlimited accumulation and toward meaningful control, resilience, and participation. Freedom here is not the right to own everything, but the assurance that no one else can own too much of the systems you depend on. That is philosophically defensible, but it will be rejected by those who equate freedom with maximal capital mobility and minimal moral constraint. The document is honest about this trade-off, which is a strength. How does it serve the people it applies to? At its best, it gives them something modern constitutions rarely do: real leverage. The right to audit, fork, refuse, recall, resist, initiate, and exit is not symbolic. It is operational. At its worst, it burdens them with constant responsibility. This is not a spectator constitution. It assumes an active, literate, engaged populace. That is noble and dangerous. There are strong reasons to implement a system like this, especially in an era of democratic backsliding, algorithmic governance, ecological collapse, and elite capture. It offers an integrated answer rather than piecemeal reform. It treats energy, information, law, economy, and ecology as a single system, which is how reality actually works. The urgency of adoption depends on one's threat model. If you believe current institutions can adapt incrementally, this looks premature. If you believe they are structurally incapable of resisting capture, this looks overdue. The strengths are clarity of moral purpose, radical transparency, distributed power, ecological integration, and a serious attempt to constitutionalize technology rather than be ruled by it. The weaknesses of verbosity, over-specification, technological optimism verging on determinism, and an occasionally absolutist posture that could paralyze governance in emergencies. Some provisions, such as extreme resistance rights, constant referenda, or hyper-detailed infrastructural mandates, risk contradicting the very stability and predictability that liberty also requires. The worst ideas inside the document are not evil ideas, they are ideas placed at the wrong level. Constitutions should set constraints and processes, not hard-code technical standards, energy systems, or lifestyle mandates. Doing so contradicts the core tenet of adaptability and risks fossilizing today's best guesses into tomorrow's bottlenecks. Similarly, an absolutist right to resist with force, while philosophically coherent, undermines the monopoly on legitimate dispute resolution that prevents civil fragmentation. The core tenets themselves, sovereignty of the person, non-domination, moral economics, ecological stewardship, transparency, and revocability of power, are sound. Their true purpose is not utopia. It is prevention. This constitution is a dam, not a blueprint for paradise. It is designed to make certain kinds of futures impossible: total surveillance states, corporate feudalism, technocratic paternalism, ecological suicide, and passive citizenship. Whether it is well-balanced depends on whether you believe the future's greatest risk is disorder or domination. This constitution chooses domination as the greater danger, and it structures everything accordingly. That choice is coherent, defensible, and bold, but it is not neutral, and it will never be universally comfortable.